we'll make a start. Hello, Michael. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome everybody to the Risk and Assurance Committee today. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Jenny to say our waiata, our karakia. Thank you.
Thank you. E oha ki ronga ki a Whanganui, e oha ki raro ki a Papatuanuku. Tura kina ngā mea kino ki te pai ātia, uia mai o korowai aroha, he tonga ma mātou, ka puta ki te wai ao, ki te ao marama, homie, huie, tai kie.
Kia ora, thank you, Jenny. We've had no apologies. We have got Kate on Zoom. Hello, Kate.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. You can hear us all right?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest for anything on the agenda? No, that's good. And we'll move to the confirmation of the minutes of our meeting on the 27th of February. Can I, so the recommendation is that the minutes are confirmed. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Thank you, Mayor. Andrew. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. All right. So our agenda today, we're starting off with a presentation which Debbie's going to lead us through on risk appetite. Now, for the members of the committee, we looked at some of this risk appetite content in our workshop last year, but we haven't actually brought it to the formal meeting. And one way we've been thinking about risk appetite has been to take it in a stepped learning sort of process, and all of the decisions that are being made, we are looking at them with a risk appetite lens. As we think about the long-term plan, the planning that you've just been through, we look at the insurance paper that's on the agenda today. It's almost saying, how do we practically think about what our appetite is around risk? So I'm going to hand over to Debbie, and then we will move into that presentation. So thanks, Debbie.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm actually going to take the report as read, but I'm just going to summarise a couple of points in it that I think are pertinent for the discussion that the committee is going to have today, particularly around insurance. Now, just to give you some assurance that it's not that we don't have a risk appetite currently, it's just time for it to be refreshed and reviewed. So with the support of this committee and going forward, as the chair has just mentioned, this is a journey. This is something we can't achieve overnight, but it is something that we can achieve in time, and this is around risk maturity. So I've actually done a brief summary. So managing risk and opportunity is part of good leadership and governance, and is fundamental to how council is managed at all levels. With council delivering a diverse and extensive range of services, we're going through the LTP at the moment, so that identifies those, across our community in an ever-changing environment. One way to do this is to continue to strengthen our governance, and it's making sure that we then make informed decision making and be in a position to understand how much risk we are willing to take on, how much risk we will accept and tolerate, or actually be exposed to in pursuing our objectives and outcomes. Council's risk appetite establishes boundaries for prudent decision making and risk taking. It actually creates some freedom within the boundaries to be flexible, but also be accountable. So risk appetite actually fits into our wider risk framework. It contributes to defining relevant measures to monitor risk. It helps to determine the levels of resourcing that risk may or may not require. It develops a council-wide view of what risk actually looks like and some of our responses that are required. And it assists council in making those informed decisions under what can be uncertain or complex and challenging situations. So risk appetite in essence is the amount that we want to be exposed to, or the potential adverse impacts that council is willing to accept, tolerate or be exposed to at any point in time in pursuit of strategic objectives. In the context of my report, and the one following on insurance, An understanding of risk appetite is fundamental to taking a strategic approach to insurance, and it also supports improving decision making by making the right decisions. This isn't about popularity, this is about making the right decisions, and also optimising operational efficiency and therefore delivering gains and value for money. So as you've already been through the presentation at the workshop that we had, and knowing going forward that we're going to have a standalone workshop that will focus on risk appetite, again, taking the report as read and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Open up for questions. Mayor Andrew.
No, well, thank you for the report. My question is, for me right now, our council-controlled organisations are top of mind, amongst other things, the LTP as well. But where does this piece of work here extend to our CCOs?
Risk appetite is council-wide. So yes, it will extend to your CCOs because the appetite, the reporting lines for the CCOs do come back to council through your CCO committee as well.
Yeah, I assumed that was the case. I just wanted to make sure.
I think if I could just make a comment, as there are changes to the CCOs, there are changes going on currently. I think we need to look again at the role of this committee with what is happening for the CCOs. It's funny, I was just saying to Debbie prior to this meeting, one of our responsibilities in the terms of reference is around the CCOs. And as things are changing, we still need to be mindful of what those risks are, whether they are identified and whether they are being managed. So I think for our next meeting, we need to sort of focus on what would be appropriate given the other governance arrangements currently and the changes with the CCOs. Is that, I mean, I have gone back to our terms of reference and thought, what are we doing in that space currently? I know there's a lot of work going on in other spaces in it.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to respond to that in the comments section cool. At the time, because I've got some thoughts about that too. So it's a very, very good point you raised.
Thank you. Yeah, cool. Any other questions or comments on the presentation? Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to risk, I remember we spoke about it 8 months ago-ish. Are we going to separate risks and opportunities and the diverse, or are we going to put risks as missing out on opportunities? Which layer are we going to go with that?
We're actually going to go with both because, again, risk and opportunity management run hand in hand. It's called risk and reward. So it will be, as you see going forward, as part of the journey, you will see both.
So to clarify, we're going to have not only risk versus opportunity to balance, and that will help us with risk appetite, but also we'll still be raising risks on loss of opportunities through misgovernance, mismanagement.
That's correct.
Cool.
Again, part of the journey going forward will be the education around what opportunity risk looks like. Traditional risk has always been in that negative space, so opportunity risk is in that positive space.
Mike Timmer.
Hi. Thank you, Debbie, for that's a really good paper. Certainly, from a theoretical point of view, it covers all the things that you need to be cognizant of in regarding risk appetite and the likes. Just one question, or two questions I had. First of all, the process from here, how are you going to roll this out in terms of a presentation? Are you going to produce a straw man type process and from management and then bring it to council, or are you going to go from the scrap, from basics at the very start and get council to come together and give you a risk appetite statement or for each risk, or however you're going to do it? I'm interested to learn that part of it.
So as noted in the report, we are looking at doing a workshop with full council. In order to understand risk, you need to have a fundamental, basically, a foundation really, and that's part of the journey. So as I said earlier on in my report, it's not that we don't have risk appetite there now. We do. This is just a time to look at our risk maturity journey. So with the support of the CE and ELT from a management side, plus the decision makers, which is our governance, we will then be working through a workshop firstly and then a plan to embed this. It's something that cannot happen overnight.
Yep.
It is a journey, and it's around risk maturity.
Just aware that David has a comment.
Through you, Madam Chair, and just to add to what Debbie has said there, I think there's two parts to this. One is how do we evolve our framework? And as Debbie has already outlined, we've already got a version of a risk appetite built into the framework through the target risk levels and the matrices with the anchored scoring mechanisms. I think it would be appropriate for officers to do the work to put together a straw man on what the evolution of that would look like, and then present that to council for further input and feedback. The second part is actually how you set or at what level you set your appetite against that framework once it's in place, and that is something that really starts with council and gets cascaded back down to officers.
Yeah, great, thank you. And just one other question regarding the CCOs and the risk appetite statement. I'm not sure whether giving the CCOs the council's risk appetite statement would necessarily work very well. They may have different risk appetites because they're in different industries. So I just caution you on that. I mean, how you want to do it, but you might get some pushback from them and say, well, we're in a different industry than you, so we should have a different risk appetite. So just some thoughts anyway.
No, thanks, Mike, and I'm aware that David would just like to respond to that.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, you are absolutely right. I think where our risk framework extends to the CCOs, it's in the capacity of guiding the council's decision making around when to invest into those things. Through the CCO review, we have proposed updating our investment policy to define what our risk appetite for investments is, and probably a sliding scale that would, for instance, increase the expected rate of return or the working cost of capital for a higher risk investment, and vice versa. But you are right, the CCOs themselves will have their own risk frameworks that they'll manage themselves to.
Councillor Josh.
Thank you. Thanks, Debbie. Just a question in terms of best practice within the local government sector. Are there any particular councils, local authorities, regional or local, that you can point to that have managed this process particularly well that we could take a lead from, or are all quite unique in terms of how they go through this process?
It's a very leading question. We all have different aspects as councils. I mean, for example, in Whanganui we have a port, we have an airport, you know, we have different levels of risk. So there are key elements of risk management out there that are like for like, particularly around terminology and everything else. But I think it's really important that each individual council sets their risk appetite and risk tolerance that works for them. If we were to do a cut and paste exercise from another council, I don't believe that it's actually fit for purpose. So we get the opportunity to look at what's best for us. You know, you can use some words from other councils' documents if you want to, but again, they're not really fit for purpose for what Whanganui actually needs.
It's a very clear answer. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I think, look, I think other councils, Debbie's quite right, that every council is different and has different industries it's in, etc., etc. But that said, there's a lot of good precedents out there from what different councils do, and you'd be foolhardy not to look at what everyone else's does and pull the eyes out of what everyone else does and get some good ideas. I can tell you when I did the risk policy for our council, I actually looked at Debbie's work, and so, you know, she had some really good stuff. So there you go, you know, it works. You know, you should always look at everybody else's, you know, you can't invent the wheel yourself. So, yeah.
Just in response to that, having added a little bit more, and thank you for that credit, Mike. I have looked at other councils, but there's very few that have a defined, that you can find, risk appetite and risk tolerance. It's often lost in amongst everything else. So that's one of the reasons why to separate it out into a package of its own, instead of getting lost within a framework or a policy.
Thank you, and thanks again for that acknowledgement too, Mike. That's nothing like using other information or data, but it's nice for Debbie to get that recognition too. Josh, do you have another question?
Oh, no, sorry, that's all.
Fine. If there are no other questions, then can I have a mover and a second? I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report, the risk appetite and risk tolerance update. Thank you, Josh, and Mike Timmer will second. Thanks very much. All those in favour? Anyone against? No, that's carried. Are there any comments on that? Mayor Andrew.
Yeah, look, this is, I'm really pleased to see this report in this committee. You know, when you think about it, councils have such a wide scope of activity, of operations, and therefore there is a risk profile with pretty much everything you do, whether it be financial, operational risk, people risk, whatever. And so I just want to say thanks for reminding us. I know it's already part of the system already, risk appetite. But I think, you know, especially from a financial perspective, we, councils across the country, are going to have to play into this risk space more than they ever have. As we look for non-rates revenue, we cannot rely on rates to drive us forward in and of themselves. And so I'm seeing the concept of risk profiles and risk appetite for specific parts of our operations as being really important. And we need to identify specifically what that risk appetite is at each juncture of our operations and project delivery. And also the other point I've got here is around having capability. Having a risk appetite is one thing, but you've got to have capability to do that. And what I'm really pleased about is that we've got I believe a council.
Recording in progress.
Oh, I have to repeat all that. So is that I think we've got a council organisation who have got really strong capability, because if you haven't got the capability, risk profile increases massively. So I'm pleased to I think all round our risk profile is being well served by good decision making at governance level, but also efficient delivery and capable delivery at operations level. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, and we got it slightly around the wrong order, but I appreciate, your comment. I think it was really important to get that in. I just did the moving and seconding in the wrong order. Anyway, I also just need to note that we have had an apology from Councillor Peter Oscom that included the meeting today. I understand. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's okay, Bridget. So we just need to go back and note that that the Risk and Assurance Committee accepts the apologies of Councillor Peter Oscom and grants leave of absence for this meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder of that? Thanks, Councillor Jenny and Councillor Josh. All those in favour? Anyone against? Carried. Thank you. That's fine. We've done that. Yeah, that's cool. We'll get the order right. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Great. Thank you for that discussion. Good paper and good discussion, Debbie, on the risk appetite and risk tolerance update. I'm going to hand over to Mike Fermor now with the insurance. And I'm delighted to actually say that we're moving from a transactional approach to a strategic approach for purchase of insurance. One of the key goals that I sort of came up with out of our workshop last year was about this committee taking a more strategic approach to risk management. And I think this is a really great example of that. Thank you, Mike. And it feels like, you know, it's a staged way of actually working this through. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So just noting that we're focusing here on the material damage policy, that is assets above ground, although a lot of the principles that we're talking here that are in this paper can also overlay on other policies as well. So when we adopted the insurance strategy last year, this was the overarching strategy to ensure that the required financial resources are made available when needed to help councils recover from a catastrophic event and unforeseen losses, while ensuring that any risk transfer is carried out in a cost-effective and prudent manner that best serves the community. So ensuring that after we have an event, we have the resources to still provide necessary services to the community and advance as a community post-event as well. So, as the Chair said, we're moving from, what's the paper highlights, moving from the transactional to strategic approach. Up until now, almost every council has taken a transactional approach to insurance. That is, we get the value of our assets, the replacement cost of our assets, and we insure for full replacement. That's what almost all councils has done for forever. As we've talked about previously, due to rising premiums, that method is becoming unaffordable. Paper last workshop talked about the premiums, $4 million just for material damage, and that, as I said, is unsustainable going forward. So moving from this transactional to the strategic approach, and some of the things we need to consider is the risk associated with each asset, the criticality of assets, how critical are those assets? If they're not critical, why insure them? And what our risk appetite is, which includes our ability to self-insure. So the previous paper talked about risk maturity, the journey we are on, acknowledging we have that in place already, but we are advancing that, improving it and developing that, which will take some time. Same for insurance. It is a journey. We're trying to make decisions in relation to year one of the long-term plan budgets. In relation to the next insurance renewal period, which is November through renewals as of November this year. However, to properly get through this takes a lot longer. Wellington, as an example, they've been on this journey for 5 years. What started their journey was insurers deciding not to insure their assets because of the increased risk down there. But there's things we can do immediately to help our situation. If we look at, again, we're trying to get our minds away from just taking every single asset and insuring it for full replacement cost to what does another way of doing it look like. And to do that, we need to understand different types of events. So here's 3 typical events. You've got a fire, likely to impact a single council asset. And because of that, council is more able to absorb that loss on its own balance sheet. You have a flood, impacts, wider impact on the community. Impacts on council in so much as our assets are located potentially in floodplains or things like that. Greater risk than fire, but then we get to the next one, which is the earthquake, which is an event, as we all know, impacts the wider community and potentially many of council assets. And this is where, post-earthquake, we come back to the insurance strategy, having sufficient resources in place to be able to meet the community's needs and to recover from that. I listened to a presentation from Wellington on their journey they've been taking, and they put the slide up. And I think we need to think about what it looks like for council post an event, particularly a wider event such as a major earthquake. We start going through these phases. We need to help community. That's part of our role. We need to make sure that our critical assets are working: water, wastewater, arterial roads. Go through IT. I've got disaster recovery, business continuity. So there's a long process we need to go through before we start thinking about many of those assets which are on our MD policy, many of our community assets. The core assets we start thinking about are those particularly on our infrastructure policy and some of the infrastructure assets, above ground infrastructure assets on our MD policy, before we start thinking about potential libraries and things like that. But even more than that, so we're talking about an extended time of recovery. We're talking about many people needing financial support, not being able to pay rates. We're talking about people leaving Whanganui if their homes are destroyed, relocating. So we're going through population decline before we start doing getting population coming back again. There are pressure on our income lines. I mentioned rates. Fees and charges from our events, venues and events are no longer being required. There's pressure on council staff because we are being absorbed in helping the community. BAU almost takes a back seat. There's pressure on contractors to deliver. And so, as I said, just trying to think about after a major event, what are our priorities? What are our immediate financial needs that we need as a council? So I found this quite interesting. It's quite sobering. Now, in one way, it's actually very good, because you think of it for your own house insurance. You never want to claim on your house insurance majorly. You never want your house to burn down and say, wow, I'm so pleased I insured it. So it's great. Our assets haven't been completely destroyed. That's probably the positive way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is quite obvious. $9 million. This is just the MT policy, by the way, material damage policy since 2015. I went back to the 2015 because that's the large major event I could think of that impacted widely across our assets. Now, it did impact our infrastructure assets, and that's probably where a lot of our claims were. Still not significant, but for MD policy, since that time, 9.25 million of surplus paid to insurers. Wellington did a similar exercise, similar result. So, balance sheet capacity. Again, I found this quite an interesting exercise, and I need you to appreciate that post a major event, all our financials become fluid. So what we've set in concrete in our long-term plan is there as a basis, but it certainly changes. So, for example, all of our aspirational projects we've got in our long-term plan at the moment, they get completely deferred. Okay, they don't become important right now. So when we talk about these debt limits, or debt we've got in a long-term plan, they are very fluid. On top of that, we have significant repairs and maintenance on our assets. If your assets have been destroyed, you don't have repairs and maintenance, you actually have renewals. So again, not only are our income lines distorted, but some of our expense lines are also distorted. And what feedback we've received from some councils as they've been for events is that often there is more income available than what they realised, than what their annual plans, long-term plan reveal. As I say, some of those expenses you don't have, so your projects don't, your nice to have projects don't proceed. But looking at raw numbers for our draft long-term plan, draft 24-34 long-term plan, you can see our second column on the left, our long-term plan debt projections gets up to $278 million and 31. Those numbers seem to roll off the tongue. Our debt limit, a self-imposed debt limit, 200%, means that we could draw up to $314 million. The LGFA debt limit, you may recall, I brought a paper a while ago, because of the COVID crisis and what some councils are experiencing, they changed some of their debt limits, put them right up to 300% and is then ratcheting back. They will eventually settle about 280%. So using that as a benchmark, you can see there's quite a large gap between our self-imposed debt limit and the LGFA limit. And we are assuming that getting up to the LGFA debt limit doesn't have a significant impact on our credit rating. Haven't really talked to Standard & Poor's about that, but they have obviously are all up to speed with the LGFA debt limits. Headroom. Our own headroom from our debt, our projected debt to what we could go up to our 200% revenue. You can see it there in the second column on the left there. We do, have 33, 34, $117 million headroom that we can draw on and still be within our self-imposed debt limit. For the LGFA headroom, and that there is the difference between, again, our projected debt levels to what we can borrow up to LGFA, and they're very large numbers, you can see there. The difference between our own self-imposed limit and the LGFA limit, again, the right-hand numbers, again, fairly large numbers that we can, in theory, draw up to. And there, I won't go further in detail, it's that middle line is the difference between the two debt limits. Now, having said that we can theoretically draw up to $487 million on a balance sheet, we can do that. What is Council's risk appetite to get to that number? And I just pose that as a comment, not as a question. I think that's something we need to work through. And in the paper, I've got the impact on rates for a couple of scenarios, just playing with a couple of scenarios there. I know this, Wellington took this to their council, and I think they got 13 different answers. Everybody's comfort level is different. But that's quite key. What the theme that is coming back from other councils who are going through this journey is to make good insurance decisions. You need to understand risk. You need to understand risk appetite. You need very good data as well to have an understanding of risk. Understanding of risk is key. Good asset values is the foundation of an insurance program and decision making. So self-insurance fund, I've got something in the paper on that. We did have this in the past. Self-insurance fund is where council decides to take the risk of these assets on its own balance sheet, or to itself fund a loss from an event. Different ways you can do this. Previously, we have had a targeted rate that created a fund. That was withdrawn a number of years ago as the pressure on rates increased. You can have that. You can, for example, in the previous charts, we saw the difference between council's own headroom and the headroom you've got for LGFA. That, coming back here, which is your right-hand column, you can say we will only stick with our own headroom, our own 200% limit, and the difference between our limit and the LGFA limit, we have a risk appetite to draw up to there. If we have an event, that becomes a self-insurance fund. That's one way. Another way, which I think it's worth thinking about, is, and we're talking about this a little bit in the LGFA, in the LTP consultation document, not in relation to insurance, but we're still talking about it, selling assets, selling unproductive assets, putting that in a PIF, a perpetual investment fund, and only drawing down on that if you have an event. I quite like that idea. That kind of resonates with me a bit. This is quite key, this slide here, an understanding of this as we talk about particularly the decisions that officers are recommending today. So under the MD policy, there's two types of cover. You have your natural disaster for cover for natural disasters, earthquakes, that sort of stuff. Interestingly, the Cyclone Gabriel was not included within that for insurance purposes, deductible purposes. But you have your deductibles or your excesses, which you have no control over. You can't alter those, they're fixed. Pre-post 1935 properties, I have them in the paper, what the numbers are. And importantly, the natural disaster deductible is for each insured asset or location when you have a disaster. So for an earthquake, if you've got, and if it hits 10 of your properties, 10 separate locations, then you have 10 lots of deductible. For the non-natural disaster, the limit we currently have deductible is 100,000. You can change that, and in the paper coming to this committee, officers are likely to recommend we increase that, 500,000, $1 million in numbers that come to mind. And again in the paper I've listed there the potential savings in premiums. That deductible though is per event, not per asset. So think about using a couple of examples here. On the schedule of low risk assets, parking meters, they have a replacement cost of $6 million. Premium is $22,000. Now, take those premiums a little bit cautious with those. When we get the MD policy, we say, here is our assets on the policy, $600 million, whatever it is, and the insurance company gives us the premium for the total schedule. What we do, just to allocate the assets to the various activities, the cost of those assets, we then allocate that premium to each of the assets based on their percentage of the value. So while I'm suggesting to remove low-cost assets, I've indicated about 107k savings. The insurance company may say, I'm on to what you're doing here. the low value assets, low cost, low risk, you're not going to get $107,000 reduction. You'll get some, but maybe not that. The real savings for us will come when we suggest that you start taking risk on our own balance sheet for high risk assets and high value assets, which we will need to get to if we want to reduce our premiums, or if we don't want to, we agree we are comfortable with rates going up to cover increased premiums. So look at parking meters. Cost $6 million, premium $22.6 million. Look at those two events. So first of all, a natural disaster. What type of natural disaster is going to knock out all of our insurance, all of our parking meters? I'm struggling to see one. If it does, the whole of Whanganui is flattened, and I suggest we're not really worried about parking meters at that point in time. Literally, the whole of Whanganui is flattened because of the nature of those assets. The other one, a good example, is the pencil sculptures. Okay, pencil sculptures, the cost is $90,000. Okay, the premium is only $340, but it's a good example. $90,000. So a natural disaster, the deductible, okay, it's under $100,000 for a natural disaster, but it's per asset. So it's deductible per asset, which you're not going to get your $90,000 back. If again, you think about the type of event that will destroy the pencils. Not likely to be an earthquake, likely to be vandalism, something like that. If it's that, it becomes a non-natural disaster. Your deductible is $100,000. It's below your deductible. You won't get insurance. So again, you think about the type of event that will impact these assets of those two there, what your deductibles are, and is it high risk or low risk? Just some examples. Critical assets, I won't be too much longer, but critical assets, I've got their work in progress. I've been using this language for 2 or 3 reports to council. I am aware that we are, as we work through our property asset register and looking at all of that, we're trying to come up with a definition that fits across council. So while I'm calling it critical assets or mission critical assets right now, that language is a little bit fluid and may change. But for now, we can use that because the definition is important. An asset that council must have in order to achieve its key priorities. An asset council must have to achieve its key priorities can be broken down into different types of critical asset. Infrastructure are critical assets. You need 3 water assets. Regulatory assets, you need a dog pound. You're required to have these things. So if these are destroyed, we need to replace them. Critical investment assets, assets that give us a return, as Mayor Andrews said, to help us offset rates. And post an event, if they're destroyed, we can rebuild and we can still use them as investment assets. So it makes sense for us to reinstate those assets post an event. Whether we finance it or insurance finance is a later decision. Critical service assets, critical community assets, those kind of go close together. Look, as we talk about journey, this is a very big journey for me, insurance. I didn't think 2-3 years ago we'd be looking at this. So my thoughts have been changing as I've been going through this process. And I originally thought community assets, you don't need them. You can offer community assets anywhere. I mean, who needs a library, really? You can offer that from a shop front. However, I came to this conclusion that community assets actually help enrich our society. It helps us as a society to be better. And so while post an event, community assets are not mission critical assets to get the city up and running again. Long term, I think they are mission critical assets. I think they are. So library serves the community and makes us richer as a community. And at some point in the future, while you can offer a library, books and that sort of stuff out of a shop front, you're not going to do that long term. You're going to have a purpose-built facility that offers that type of service. Now, you may want not the same type of library we've got now, because libraries are changing. It may be a functional replacement asset, in other words, an asset that suits the needs in the future. But as I said, I think they are critical long-term assets. So, look, this is, I think it's reasonably easy to come to the decision that officers are asking you for. You may disagree with me. I think it's a really straightforward recommendation. As a whole, you may argue on one or two individual assets, but as a whole, I think it's pretty straightforward. Unless you want your rates to keep on going up. It's fairly straightforward. But to get to the next stage, it's going to be difficult and a lot of work. So what are we doing at the moment? We're looking at asset criticality, trying to define that. Is this asset actually critical? What is the risk? What's our exposure to this asset if we don't have it? How does it impact our level of service that we need to deliver? What's the impact on our balance sheet if we decide actually we don't need to insure it, and if it's ever destroyed, then we can make a decision whether we're going to have it or not. I mentioned about asset valuations being the foundation of a good insurance strategy. Those are not my words, that's somebody else's words, but it's true. So part of this process is actually updating our values on our asset schedule. When I look at those asset values, I think one or two are undercooked. So I think as we go through the exercise this year, we'll see those values coming up, the replacement cost coming up, which all that will do is put our premiums up. So let's be realistic about that, double-edged sword. Updating valuation, talk about that, and undertaking sort of this condition assessments to better define individual asset risks. That's similar to the second point there. So that's the work going on at the moment. It's not a quick exercise, but we're doing that at the moment. I think this is my last slide. As I said, this is a journey that officers have been through. We've got a team looking at this. When we were going through this journey, some questions started popping up at mind. I've already mentioned the libraries, the way community assets, the way our thoughts are changing on that, but ensuring that our insurance strategy aligns with our other strategies as well. You know, infrastructure strategy. If our infrastructure strategy says this is a core asset, then we've got to make sure decisions for insurance reflects that as well. The number of community assets. We are rich with community assets. So we've got two, while I think we need a library, or something that offers that function, do we need two libraries in the same location? Yeah, good question. So we are rich with community assets. We've got 2 or 3 swimming pools. Do we need 2 or 3 swimming pools? And a major event happens, do we need 2 pools? Heritage assets. I think a bit of a trap, heritage assets, because again, we're rich with heritage assets. If a heritage asset is destroyed, it's no longer a heritage asset. So don't necessarily let that dominate your decision. Just put that point out there. Monuments and memorials. Again, we're rich with those, and we should have those. They are critical. Do we need the form of memorial asset that we currently get that we currently have. War Memorial Building, over $100,000 to insure, $20+ million. Yes, we need a war memorial, of course we do. Do we need that form of memorial? We've got the Jury Hill Tower, again, $20,000–$30,000 to insure. If that was destroyed, will we replace like for like, is what I'm trying to say. So again, yes, we need memorials. Do we need the same form that we've got? Sports facilities. Rich with sports facilities. Do we need all that we've got? One of the things, for example, a velodrome, low-use asset. Do we need that if it was destroyed? Again, fairly difficult decisions that we'll be putting in front of you. Right, that's probably almost enough from me. There is a recommendation, what I've termed in the report, low-hanging fruit. I believe they are most are low-hanging fruit. I've had a look this morning, one or two have creeped through that you may think possibly not. One of them that came to mind was the Springs Park changing sheds. And while we may likely recommend not insure that, yet it's probably not quite in the category that I was trying to achieve with the schedule, with monuments, parking meters, that sort of stuff. So that one stood out to me. So the recommendation here is for this council to is up there that we recommend to the council that we remove these assets from our MD policy. I've spoken to Aon about this, and we'll talk about next steps actually, after this. If we remove an asset from a policy during the year, then we do get a credit for the asset for the remaining part that we've removed it, that is not insured, which will help us with our premiums for the following year. The next steps, by the way, at some point, council, this committee, will need to recommend to council if it wants to meet our budget in the long-term plan and reduce rates, we'll need to make some very difficult recommendations up to council. Now, I believe that as a committee and as a council, you probably need to understand more about the risk matrix around this before you make that recommendation. So we are, the slide I had before, the stuff we're working on, we're going to present that to you. But I believe what is needed is a workshop with council and the two independents to understand that stuff. So when I bring the item through to this committee to make recommendations, some fairly tough calls, you're in a position to make an informed decision. So that's where our thinking is at this stage. So enough from me. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for the presentation and taking us deeper into this journey, consistent with the strategy that we approved last year. I'm just going to, so thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm not sure who was first, but Councillor Jenny.
Thank you. The only sticking point for me on this one is our view and the insurance company's view. And we divide it out amongst all our assets, and they do a bulk over that whole asset class. So what's the indication, or have you had an indication yet, as to what that alteration in policy might be, and premium, might be?
I've given in here a very high level estimate of 107,000. It's likely to be lower than that. As I said, I'm pushing this one because low risk assets. I think we've acknowledged that we need to reduce what we insure. So I'm seeing this as a fairly straightforward decision. The committee may disagree with me, and then the next committee meeting, we don't need to worry about this stuff. We can get onto the real meaty stuff. The insurance companies, when we furnished the MD policy, the schedule, of assets, they require a whole load of information. And so they very much are looking at risk for individual assets and that sort of stuff. And so they will recognise that these assets are low risk. And so 107, you're not going to get that, but we will get something. Does that answer your question?
Probably not, but thank you. The point is you don't have the number, so therefore you can't provide it, and I think that's the thing. So it would be good to find it, when we finally do get it, know what it is. Because if we remove all these, and I can fully appreciate why. I've read the schedule, why we would do that to this schedule of assets. But if it's not going to make any material difference to our premium, then why do it? So, but we're not going to find that out till down the track. So it's a bit like suck it and see, isn't it?
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe it's necessarily the right process to just say we're only going to remove the big assets because that's where the big savings is going to be. I'm going to leave the small assets on a schedule. So I think you need, taking a holistic approach, you do need to look at your low-risk assets as well as those high-value, high-risk assets to get the maximum benefit from it.
I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing, but that's all good. I'm all good.
Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is our probability of an event? Like, I noticed there was no expected annual loss on here. I was wondering if you've calculated the probability of event and matched it against insurance.
No. Sorry, you're right. So the paper does talk about the maximum probable loss. That would be in a major event.
180, yeah.
And through the paper presented last year, it did talk about loss from an earthquake from the the infrastructure policy, infrastructure assets. So we have done that work for relating to infrastructure.
Yeah, because what I got excited about was self-insurance, and so I started calculating maximum probable loss, expected annual loss, and where the break-even point was. Have you done any analysis on that, on whether or not we should just drop insurance altogether?
No, we haven't gone down to that detail. We're still in the process of understanding the risk of some of our assets as well.
Cool. Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Just aware, Councillor Kate has a question. Could we throw it over to you at the moment, Kate, please?
I do, thank you. And it could be that dealing with the example that I'm going to raise is something for down the track. But what prompted my question was seeing that you've included in the low risk, low hanging fruit category the infrastructure at Cook's Gardens and the Spriggans Park changing sheds, but not the likes of Virginia Lake, Kowhai Park, Wembley Park, etc. Particularly Wembley Park, I guess, because they're looking at a big replacement. Is that something for later, or?
Yes, yes, it is. Each of these major assets, they have a lot of different components to them. So obviously, Virginia Lake, you have a multitude of components that makes up that particular asset for our insurance for a schedule. So we need to go down to individual assets. So while some assets, for example, Cook's Garden is a good example, while some of those assets, like the grandstand, you may decide we want to insure, the risk is high, yet some of the assets included within that one asset, such as the concrete pavement and things like that, you may decide for that component we won't insure. So for some of these assets we haven't gone to that detail. That will come for later work. I have said before that the Springs Park changing sheds, not necessarily low risk. the Cook's Gardens infrastructure, by the way, we've got there, that we've got on here, it does include the entranceways. It includes sealed pathways and surfaces of $1.6 million. So, sealed pathway surfaces probably low risk of damage.
Thank you, Mike. So my question would be then, this further work, how long is the further work and the, getting a bit more granular about what's involved, what we're not suggesting beyond the low value list assets at this stage? When is that work going to happen?
I had to be quite frank about it. We would love to get good information to you so you can make decisions for the renewal period in November. I'd love to get something really good to you by the next committee meeting. I'm also conscious people working on this insurance are also working on long-term plan and other things as well. So we need to be realistic about workloads and what we can achieve. We'll do our best, but I don't want to promise timelines at this stage.
No doubt you've had the conversation about resourcing up to get this work done. That's a question.
We've started that, and we will have those conversations as well. Yes.
Thank you.
I guess in adding to that comment, as I said before, this is a journey for me as well, and for the team that are under this. And the more you go into it, the more kind of things you peel off, you realise, there's even more questions underneath that. So like anything, the more you delve into it, the more complex you realise it is. So I take your comment on resources.
Can I just... our next meeting is the 1st of August, and then there is one on the 3rd of October. So just thinking through timelines and things like that. So even if we were to make decisions in October, that would be in time for the November renewal period?
It's getting very close. We tried to finish our schedules well before November because we need to go to the market. The group, so it's a collective, needs to go to the market. The insurance companies need to see that and then start pricing it. So there's a bit of work they need to do from their side before they they accept the cover for the year. Having said that, this particular year they were a bit late because that took a bit longer than usual. Look, in the ideal world, we would have a workshop before now and the next committee meeting. So the next committee meeting we can bring something to you, but we'll talk about it as a management team and see what we can and cannot do.
Thank you. Mayor Andrew.
So just want to check in. I think you've just said it, Mike. We're talking about 107,000 of low risk assets, correct? Yes, no.
There or thereabouts, probably under that.
And it might be less,
yes,
right?
Yes.
The other one I've just noted in here, it's not actually related to the low risk portfolio, but is the Sergeant Gallery. I notice is the insured value is 18 million. So I'm just wondering. I'm using that as a test for what the others are valued at, because I would have thought it would have been, given the value to build it, would have been.
Yeah. So currently the insurance for the sergeant is in our contracts work. So it is insured for the full value at the moment, but it's not on our MD policy. That insurance for that building under contract works finishes the end of June, at which point it will transfer over to this policy. Let's be realistic about that. You've got an asset insured at $20 million replacement. It's going to be insured at $80 million replacement. The impact on premiums, 200,000. I have talked to Ale and said, look, being a bit provocative here, it's a concrete bunker. If that falls over in an earthquake, again, Whanganui's flattened. If you have a fire, there's fire suppression there. You're not going to destroy $80 million. What happens if we just insure it for $40 million, understanding only that much of damage? And of course, insurers are wise to this. So if you did that, the savings are minimal because they understand the risk they put on the asset as it is at the lower end.
Okay. Councillor Josh.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of points. There are some memorials listed on here through Pakatori Motua Gardens, and I'm just flagging that I would expect there to be some stakeholder engagement with the Pakatori board on that point, but also in particular Heritage New Zealand, because my understanding is that those memorials are actually under the custodianship of Heritage New Zealand rather than of council, even though they come under our insurance scheme. So clarification of those matters prior to making a decision would be useful.
Perhaps just a response to that. This is not about getting rid of an asset. It's not about that. The asset's there. This is about taking the risk on our balance sheet. And I'm certainly not saying that if this asset was destroyed, we would not replace it. Whether we replace it like for like or a functional replacement. So again, it's not about saying, actually, we don't need this asset. Not about that at all. It's about the risk profile and taking the risk onto a balance sheet.
Yeah, totally understand that, and wasn't suggesting otherwise. My point was that given that there is a separate governance entity involved, that some pre-engagement just to help that entity understand what's changing would be useful prior to the decision coming to council. The other point I just wanted to get confirmation on is that with the Sargent Gallery, for instance, a change here would not impact any insurances around, say, contents, the insurance of the collection or anything like that, would it? This is purely the building.
Yeah.
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 Perfect. Thank you.
Mike Timmer.
Thank you very much for your report, Mike, and also thank you very much for going through it. It is a complicated area, and for people that are not familiar with insurance to get their head around, so thank you for that. I've got quite a few points. The first one is the critical assets, and you went into a bit of length there defining what a critical asset was, but I'm not sure if I got comfort that everybody was on board with it in terms of your alignment between your different policies, your asset management plan, for example, your infrastructure policy, and what the common use of critical asset means and what it means in relation to community. There seemed to be a bit of fluid amount around all of that. So having really clear definitions on that, I think, would help councillors make up their mind as to what goes off the list and what stays on the list. So the second thing that I came up with was you did put a scenario in there about rates and the impact of a $25 million increase in debt and how that would impact on rates. That's really good. But I just didn't really get enough comfort around there if you did a scenario on a big event, because 10% of site, and that's just a number that easily rolls off your tongue. But if you've got 390 million of assets, 10% of 390 million, and I know they're not all pre-1930, whatever it was, 1930, that's 39 million. So it'd be quite good just to get a feel for if you had a really big event, how the numbers would look, because you've got your deductible, and then you've got your uninsured assets, and then you've got some remedial work. Is there enough money and enough resilience and for the ratepayers to pay for it all? So it's just getting all those getting all that all together, and so we could have a scenario there to say, yeah, this would work. While we can go and borrow money from the LGFA and we can borrow till the cows come home, that's one thing, but the question is, can the ratepayers afford it? That's the other thing. So it's just a matter of aligning all those a bit better. I thought that was you'd done some good work on there, but I think it needs to be expanded. The third point is there's nothing in here in the document, or there might have been some very brief passing on it, about going forward in the future, about building in the future, because one of the things council can do is build. When they build something, make sure that they build it in such a way that it's going to be more earthquake resistant than it has in the past. Because if you do that, then what happens is your insurance premiums are going to be a lot less. And just on that, there's a questions about the Sergeant Gallery, and I'm not sure how that building has been built, and has that taken into account earthquake in the future, and its resilience to earthquake and all those things, and where the premium's set. But given it's such a large asset, it might even be worthwhile to do just a little report on that from an earthquake engineer to say, this building's actually really resilient, and we don't think we need an earthquake of such and such an intensity, and as you said, it's in a bunker and it's not going to fall over and all these things. Because insurers are, and no disrespect to them, but inherently lazy. They don't do a lot of work on it, and if they don't know, they just fill it with premium. So if you can give the insurers a lot of comfort around something like that asset, because it's going to form a big part of the portfolio, then that would be I think that would be money well spent. And then my last comment was, it would be quite good at some point when this is all over to go then do a recircle and go back to the insurance strategy and update the insurance strategy to reflect all these things that we're doing. But I think you've done a really good paper. I think there's still some work to do, but hey, excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Mike. Mike Fermor, do you have any responses to those? The first one was about critical assets definition, and I think what I heard you say was that we are working through definitions there. Anything further you want to add to any of those?
Look, part of the workshop, to make good decisions, you need to understand what is the potential loss in an event. Now, this is just MD policy. The reality is an event such as an earthquake will also significantly impact infrastructure. So it's not just loss on the MD policy, what is the potential loss on the other policies, because then you can start to understand the full impact of an event. So look, perfectly understand there's still a lot of work to do in this space.
So there were a few other points of Mike's, but we can probably cover those. But notwithstanding what you've just said and the comments around the room and the questions that have been asked, is the recommendation still as it is on the paper?
What I'm hearing is that there's some discomfort around a few of the assets on the schedule. One of them I've admitted, the changing sheds doesn't really fit into what I was trying to achieve here. The other one is around the Pakatori monuments. There needs to be some communication before we make a decision around them. So the two ways, I guess, forward, and David, you may have a view, is around we agree, make a recommendation to Council to remove assets listed on the schedule minus those ones I've mentioned, or at this stage you note the report.
Can I just make a comment on that point? So I'd be happy to vote for this recommendation, provided that the gap between it now and it coming to council provided enough time to work through some of those details. Also comfortable given that there would obviously be the officer report sitting on top of it before it comes to that council meeting. So maybe it's just a case of adding in subject to amendment to the recommendation.
Right.
To clarify that point.
Cool. Thank you, Josh. Would you like to make a comment?
Through you, Madam Chair, I was going to head in a similar direction to Councillor Josh. That is, you could make your recommendation to council that they approve this, subject to officers having completed the necessary communication beforehand. We'll either get it done in this meeting cycle, or if we need a little bit more time, we can just defer that recommendation coming up until the following meeting cycle.
Mike, did you have another point?
Yeah, just a question that's just come to my attention is about your finance strategy. I think you might want to consider whether you put this in your finance strategy that, we do have insurance, but we don't insure assets, and some assets we don't insure at all, just so that the public are aware of what we do. Beg your pardon? Yeah, we self-insure, but it would, and I think there's a requirement now to put something in your financial statements along those lines anyway. But it's one of the things that if the community, the community can get upset if you haven't told them that you're doing it. So I think it would be prudent just to have something in there.
Thank you, Mike. I think that's a follow-up that we could look at that. Okay, so I'm going to put the recommendation amended. Did we get that, Bridget? So we had, yes, so we had that the committee recommends to council that it cancels insurance cover on those assets identified in the attachment, low risk property assets contained within the report, insurance moving from a transactional approach to a strategic approach, for purchasing insurance presented to the 2nd of May Risk and Assurance Committee meeting, subject to officers completing the necessary communication and, is there another communication? He did, I didn't write it down, but being completed will do, right. So that I'm putting that recommendation. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Happy to move, Jenny? Yes, thank you. Josh has seconded it. All those, pardon? Oh, Kate?
I'd just like to briefly speak to it, if I could.
Yes, that's fine.
Really excellent paper and a good, I hate this phrase, but a good direction of travel. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, Mike, and your team. Can I just ask that before this paper goes any further, that we ensure that we've got the correct names of the assets in our schedule and that we've got our spelling correct. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we deal with the completing?
Yes, I just noticed that too. If Bridget, could you just have a look at the red bit, please? Mayor Andrew.
Oh, do you want to finish this first? Or?
I suppose we should really, shouldn't we? Yes. So with, sorry?
I think we need to have further analysis in there somewhere.
Subject to officers completing the necessary communication. And analysis, yep. That will cover the correct naming, what should be in there, whether there are a couple in there that should be there before it goes further. Yeah, is that cool? Thank you. So we've moved and seconded it. Any comments? Mayor Andrew?
Yeah, no, look, I'm very happy to support this, and I just want to say thank you, Mike, and your team, whoever's been involved in this. It takes a special person to get deep into this. And, I guess what we're talking about is, I think I calculated, I've got my numbers right, 4% of our assets are in the low, in this low risk range. And, but we've taken some, there's been some robustness even in that small proportion. So, well done. Yeah.
Thank you. And Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to also say I got really excited reading this yesterday, and then I got a little bit upset that you didn't go further, but I see why you've started here, so I appreciate that. And when you ask somebody, why do you have insurance, it's because they cannot raise the funds to replace an asset. They cannot do that. We can do that, and we loan at a lower percentage than most insurers, although they keep their capital in other areas, but then in a mass event their areas go down in value and then they go bankrupt. So will they actually pay is a different story, I guess. I love the calculations on the low, and the low is basically a complete obvious thing. If my house burnt down tomorrow, I would not rebuild it. I cannot rebuild a 110-year-old house, even with money. So look at some of these things that we're insuring. You can't replace them. They're 100 years old. So you're just never going to. You'll put a pluck up later on. So I like the direction we're going in. I'm really excited to see where you end up on this journey, Mike, because self-insurance, mathematically ensuring that our expected annual loss is being catered for in the financials. The only risk I'm seeing here is insurance. People don't think they can cut during annual plans, but when you start saying, I'm going to put aside this much money for the expected annual loss, and then someone comes along and wants to cut that, it's a risk. So I think it needs to be protected in some way, but otherwise, yeah, really happy in this direction. Thank you very much.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I'll put the motion on the screen as amended, with the subject to officers completing the necessary communication and analysis. We've had a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Anyone against? Are you in favour, Kate? Yep. Thank you. Thank you. That's clear. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. I knew that would be a big item, so thank you very much, Mike Firma, for all the work on that and the really valuable discussion. We're going to move to the Organisational Improvement Report. Right. I thought we might do 10 minutes on this, yeah? Okay. Thank you. We'll move to that report. Debbie, over to you, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, if everyone would like to take a deep breath, this is actually quite a lighter and less intense report, and a very positive report. You will see in there that the number of open items that have been derived from past audit reports have reduced significantly over the past few months since this was last reported. I'm going to take the report as read and happy to answer any questions. I will point out, however, slight changes in the reporting format in the table, which now assigns owners of the outcome and also a revised status as at the end of March when I was doing this report. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions on the report? Yeah, no, I heard Jenny say good progress. Mike Timmer, you have a question?
I don't actually have a question on the report. I just think you've done a really good job here, Debbie, presenting it to us. It's clear, like you say, it's got owners and it's got a expected completion date. Well done on getting everything done, everybody. Yeah, it's a good report. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. I when I went through this yesterday, I was looking at the MWLAS Fraud Risk Management Assessment 2018, and when you see things in 2018, that's 6 years ago, I'm just wondering when this was raised, and I see some areas to close it off, which is great, but has it been there since 2018, and if so, was it raised then, and if so, why hasn't it been closed off after 6 years? Or am I missing something?
I thought I had that on. I didn't start in the job until midway through 2018, and what I found at that point were a whole lot of unresolved audit reports. So one of the tasks that I had in the subsequent years has been picking up on those and getting some forward movement on them. And some will take longer than others because they require resourcing or there are some other changes in there. But certainly there has been a lot of progress for what was actually open at that point. So don't take it to heart that 2018 was when I first started nagging people. It was actually a period of time after that.
I don't have a question, but I could just follow up on that. I thought that might be the case, and I just want to say thank you that you're here to soak up the mess. Yeah.
Councillor Michael.
Slightly comical question, but is Mike Fermor a naughty ELT member or a good ELT member because he has the majority of risks?
No, slightly rhetorical. I think it's a reflection of how many risks are in the finance area, basically. Yes, absolutely. David, comment.
Look, through you, Madam Chair, I actually just want to pick up on the Mayor's comment there. First of all, thank you for acknowledging the hard work that staff have put into this. I think it does represent a a change in how the organisation has been managing these things in recent years, and it I can't take too much credit for it because it does predate my time as well. But Debbie's and the team have done a lot of work to get on top of a systemic issue around completing audits, but then not following through and actioning the recommendations. And it's pleasing to see that we've gone from, I think, was it 100 outstanding actions to now just 18 left on the table, and a chunk of those 18 are new and current actions. So yeah, I think just reinforce the point, this is a good news report because it is the organisation cleaning up a legacy and putting new systems in place to stay on top of things.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put the recommendation that the Risk and Assurance Committee receive the report, Organisational Improvement Corrective Action Update. A mover and a seconder. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mike Timmer. Any comments? I'd just like to say thank you too. It's really great to see this, and really good work and the way it's been set out. I know how many there were at the sort of beginning. I didn't quite come in 2018, I don't think, but I think we've also stemmed the flood of them too through a lot of, there was quite a few internal audits that actually brought up some issues too. So now we're taking a more strategic approach to some of the internal audits where some of this work flowed through. So I think it's a very good, a good example of really good progress in this space. So thank you. Oh, okay, Kate's got her hand up too.
Thank you.
Kate.
Thank you. Not to take away from the kōrero about the good work, but I think it's also part of a maturing approach to managing risk. And also some of those items, I would expect those outstanding items were actually done but never recorded as being completed. And as the auditor says when he comes to see me, if it's not ticked and signed off, it didn't happen. But sometimes it actually does happen. So I don't want to take away from the excellent work that Debbie and her team have been doing. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew.
Yeah, and just because we're in comments now, my first one was a question. I do want to reiterate that it's really pleasing to see the focus of management of risks with you in place, Debbie. So thank you for your work, and I know that you work really hard behind the scenes because that's what I'm told. And I always see you at your desk working diligently, so it's obviously the product of your hard work and dedication towards risk is paying off. So thank you.
Can I just, through the chair, can I just respond to that? The work that's been done has only been as good as the responses that I get from the action owners and the responsiveness to change. And I think it was touched on before, it is part of this wider journey. It's part of the wider risk maturity journey of people accepting that audit's not always bad. That's why the reporting used to be called corrective actions, because that's what there was. There were so many of them, and it was corrective actions. Now it's called organisational improvement, because again, it moves the focus onto improvement tools. So, but thank you for the acknowledgement, and it is a journey, and it's a collective journey. I'm merely the collator and the nagger to get things done.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, just follow that up by saying audits are always great in my view. And we should embrace them, and where there are findings and corrective actions, that's a great thing. So, yeah.
Cool. So I put the recommendation. It's been moved and seconded. If there are no more comments, all those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you. That's carried. I think we'll take a break now for 10 minutes. So it's nearly 2:30. We'll be back at 2:40. Sorry, Lance. we're all back. Councillor Josh and the Mayor. Okay, welcome back everybody. We're now moving to item 5.4, which is the P3M Benefits Management and Change Management Framework. I welcome Lance and Trish to the table. Thank you very much for your report, and I'll throw it over to you. We're still excited about the project management framework for the council and what will, how that will actually shape our work program going forward. So thank you for this update, and I'll ask you to speak to highlight any points in your report, and then we'll have a discussion. Thank you.
So kia koutou, thank you. Just an apology that I wasn't here to answer the questions at the last meeting in February. I was in Australia, so this report is as a result of just some of the questions that were asked and couldn't be answered at the time. So it was just to provide more information in regards to the frameworks to do with benefits management and change management. Change management, you would have seen there's two aspects to it. There's the organisational change management, and then there's the project change control. So if you've got any questions from the report, I'll pass it over to you and happy to answer.
Cool, thank you very much. Any questions from the report? No? Okay, it was good that you came back from Australia for this.
Fabulous.
Yes, yes. Okay, then I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report, the Benefits Management and Change Management Framework. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Thank you, Mike Timmer and Jenny. And Kate, did you have a question, or you're in favour? All in favour? Comments?
Comment.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
You go first, because I just put this.
Sorry, you were a bit quick. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for the report. And I'm really excited about the stuff that's happening in project management. I think it's really good, and I think the benefits once you get this stuff and once we get this implemented, I think it'll make a big difference to how projects get run, how the whole reporting and the whole process works, and I'm really excited about it. So it's really pleasing to get this. Thank you very much.
And Councillor Jenny.
Now that I've finished eating. Ditto from me as well, but just one small thing, because this material is in the public arena and available for our community to read, you know, it would be very easy for someone to go, what the hell's P3 benefits management? So if we could just have, maybe when we do things, and I guess this goes for all the reports, where there is something cryptic like that in the heading, that there's just something in here, a small paragraph that tells you what that is, just so that people know that they can come on the journey with us, because it is really good stuff. So thank you very much.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, everyone in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Trish and Lance, for the work. All right, we're up to the audit management report for the long-term plan. Robin, welcome to the table. And would you like to just speak to the report, and then we'll ask you any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So the purpose of this paper is to provide you with an update of the long-term plan, and specifically to provide you with the results from the audit of the long-term plan consultation document. So some of the finer details are in the report, but just to highlight, we received a non-standard audit report with 3 emphasis matters, and the non-standard audit report part comes from the fact that we had 3 emphasis matters. So overall, Audit New Zealand felt that that the council had produced a consultation document that fulfills the primary purpose of providing an effective basis for public participation, and that's quoted within their report. And the 3 emphasis matters are simply to draw the reader's attention to uncertainties associated with specific content within the document. So the three outlined are over cost savings, the cost to develop a hotel and car park, and external funding of the Royal Opera House. So detailed information is within the report itself and within the attachment. So at this stage, we've passed the first audit hurdle, and we have another approaching beyond deliberations, which will be at the end of June. So within the audit report, you'll notice there's a handful of items that audit have asked us to rectify in the next stage of the audit, which we will be doing. And I just lastly wanted to mention that in the report, I noted that the deliberations date was under review, and this is because of the volume of submissions that we're receiving, alongside the items that we're talking about and the complexity that sits behind them. So because of this, we have decided to push the deliberations out to the 5th to the 7th of June. And as a bit of context, this week we've had a mad rush of submissions coming in, so we're reaching up to 1,500 at the moment. So this is already a record amount when we compare it to previous LTP cycles, and they are still coming in, so this isn't the final number. We closed today at 5 p.m. So because of the shift in deliberations date, this does create a knock-on effect for the second audit and the adoption of the long-term plan. So the second audit will now occur the 24th of June to 5th of July, and this has been agreed to and confirmed by Audit New Zealand. And the adoption of the LTP will now occur on the 16th of July. And due to the flexibility provided by the Office of Auditor General, which was highlighted to you in February, we are able to adopt the LTP after that 30th of June date. So there are no legislative risks associated with this change. So that's everything from me.
Great, thank you very much. 1,500, gosh, it's a huge number, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, any questions about the audit report? Yes.
Just a wee one.
Councillor Martin.
The Whanganui life-saving service, have we told our population that it's not operating grant and it is actually just a asset? Because it says here, put it into the, take it out of property, plant and equipment and put it into operating grant.
Just to answer that question, this is a transaction in our financial statements. Our financial statements doesn't identify who or what grants and that is. In the consultation document, which is what the public will provide feedback, we have it clear in there.
So that was correct. Cool.
Yep.
That's all good.
Any other questions? I just had one around the strategic risks going forward. So I know you're doing some work on those at the moment, David, and you know the points that Audit New Zealand have raised in here. The 6-point plan is, very clear about the savings we need to make and the asset sales, those sorts of things. So will the risks around achieving that come through the strategic risk register? Will we see them through there when the long-term plan is approved? Yes, and the return on the asset sales.
Through you, Madam Chair, the answer to that is for the efficiency savings, probably yes, but it'll depend on, I suppose, how high up it ranks, because the financial implications of not achieving those savings are relatively modest and will probably score quite low on our risk matrix. Mm-hmm. In terms of the asset sales, again, that's something that we'll probably report through. I think achieving affordable rates on the 6-point plan as a whole is probably how we'd package up a single strategic risk around that.
Cool, that's great. I thought that would be what we'd sort of need to see, going forward. So that's good. Thank you. No other questions? Then I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report, the audit management report for our Whanganui District Council's consultation document for 2024-20 to 34 long-term plan. Have a mover and a seconder, please. Mike and Josh. Any comments? All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for all your work. That's great. Cool. All right, we're going to move to the Unreasonable Complainant Conduct Policy. So welcome to Marianne and Raewyn. I'll pass it over to you. You can assume that we've read the policy, but a bit of framing from you would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just by way of introduction, because this will be Raewyn's first time coming to the committee to presenting, so just to introduce everyone. So Raewyn is our customer support and services manager, so she looks after our teams downstairs, our frontline contact centre, as well as the customer support teams, which is widely the admin are doing all the work in the background for our regulatory and compliance teams and our building admin as well. So I'll let Raewyn talk through the policy and then we can take questions at the end if that's right.
Great. Welcome, Raewyn.
Yes. I'll write one on.
Okay, so we've noticed quite an increase in the way the public are and their frustrations. So just leave it on. Yep. So that, you know, impacts my team as well as others around council. So what I really wanted to do with this is develop something that would assist our staff and make it very clear what is unreasonable behaviour. But in doing that, also making it very fair for our customers that we're doing things by the book, basically, that we're not just doing it ad hoc, that there is, you know, guidelines that the staff are following. And it was basically identifying, well, what is unacceptable behaviour? Is it in the written form? Is it violence when they come into council and threatening and all the rest? So it actually covers all of that, from persistent emails, unreasonable demands and not taking no for an answer. So it's all covered under the policy. So this came about also by our good drills workshop training that we've had, which is all about de-escalation of customers coming in. And so our staff, our wider team, have been involved in these workshops, and it's about realising that staff are not alone. They actually are part of a team and a wider team. So we've got some really good strategies in place that, you know, that my front office team can start, and it rolls out to the back office. Lance has been involved in quite a lot of this, and that's been quite helpful when we've had someone come in and give us these different scenarios, and, you know, having to think on your feet and what is a code orange is our word that we use, and how to, you know, get assistance, and that's really, really important. So I guess basically is how do we manage this behaviour, and that can be from an informal approach, it can be in a written form, it can be going right through to trespassing them off premises. It can be all council premises, it can just be the main office, but making it a fair system for everybody, including obviously our customers, and then having a time frame that we're possibly, you know, blocking their calls for a certain amount of time, and then we will re-look at it. There's been no issues going forward, so it's a lot of that sort of work behind the scenes as well.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Michael.
Very simple one, because it just triggered a question that two people have asked me. When you say blocking calls, can you block emails, and is it blocked from the domain level?
Yep, we can block calls and emails, but
Okay.
there has to be a very good reason why, and we don't just do it lightly.
No problems. Just to clarify, that means that these people cannot contact their counsellors as well.
They can't come through on the Your Council email, which is the generic email.
Okay,
address.
okay. Yeah, so they can still,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Anyone
Josh Channel
else
and
that
Mackay
they have,
at Whanganui, yeah, he takes all complaints for counsellors. Thank you.
Yeah, so no, definitely individual email addresses, but not the Your Council generic email.
Okay. Mayor Andrew.
Yeah, look, thank you very much, Raewyn and Mez. What appears to me in this document, it's very very well defined for physical in-person interactions, and I see on page 102 references, and one of them is around social media terms of use. So my question is, with the increase obviously in online interactions to council and about council in general, but also about council officers and elected members, where that comes with the territory, but to what extent does this go into social media use?
I've been in touch with our comms team who have certain responses that they will have to online users who are abusing on, they can do it from their end. So we have a like a social media, did we call it a policy, Maz? Yeah. So they have terms of use.
Yeah.
So they have very defined, areas that they will allow and not allow online abuse.
Yeah, so I've seen that council's social media terms of use. So just in follow-up to your response, when it's about council in general, that's one thing, but when it's personalised to a council member, which I don't know if that happens or not, but let's assume it does, and we talk about harassment and hear from the public to our council employees, do we have a mechanism to respond to that? Because, for example, with email, you can just change your email address, which is what people do, and they continue to harass council. I know of at least one person that does that. So, So anyway, it's probably a rhetorical question, but probably doesn't need a response. But I guess I can see that the physical part's managed well, but it's more the social component, social media.
David.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think Marianne may know the answer to this better than I, but we do monitor the comments posted on our social media channels, and if it's highly inappropriate comments being made, I think we do proactively delete some of them, don't we? Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. The issue is when people go on Facebook pages and things that aren't controlled by us, so we can't control what people write on their own pages, and we've obviously seen a lot of that over the long-term plan. This particular Facebook page in general, a community one that is just, it's not even worth looking at from a council side, because you just spend all your day trying to correct incorrect information. So our comms team do look after our Facebook, and so that is our one source of truth. So if comments are made on that, they will do it. But we can't really control what people choose to write on their own pages. We have had cases in the past where council officers might be named or sort of attacked, and we do have legal means we can go down if it gets to that point as well.
Thanks, Marianne and Raywin, for this. My question's a bit more about the actual the document. On page 102, it's the last bit of the document. It's about record keeping, and it refers there to the name and address of customer. What's where the bullet points are, the restrictions put in place, and all of those kind of things. But I just wondered, I thought you'd be keeping a record of the frequency of the complaints and what actually the complaint's about, because I assume that the reason why you're keeping all of this is if the Ombudsman comes, and there'll be other good reasons why you do, but it just seemed to me that bit was missing, the frequency of the complaint and what it was actually the complaint was.
Just to add to that, so if a customer contacts us with a complaint, that goes into our CRM system.
Yeah.
So that's already recorded in
Yeah.
that. So
And I can imagine it's already recorded in the
linked.
system. It's just a matter of what's in the policy. That's all I'm trying to.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
just
that's
being
a
a
good
bit
point.
pedantic about what we record.
Yeah, we can add in something showing
yeah,
that the rest is recorded in CRM. That's fine.
Councillor Michael.
I just want to expand on Mayor Andrews' comments around social media. Are we going to protect our staff on, this is very focused on the council pages, the council area, but are we going to protect our staff from people accessing personal social media and attacking them there? Can we still do the same process to protect our staff outside of the council IP?
With our front, facing staff, we only have first names. on badges, so we don't have full names.
Yeah.
We have a generic business card that we give out. We use a generic email address, and they don't put their name to that. So that's one way we try to protect the customer services team staff.
Nice. So most of our frontline people then, we've put policies and procedures and processes in place. That means it's very hard to. But if they were to find, we would still take action and protect them.
I think if you're meaning if someone attacks, say, an individual staff member through their own personal Facebook page, I think we'd support the staff member to do what they need to on their personal page. Like we can't step in as such, but absolutely, staff are always reminded that they don't need to tolerate anything of that kind. Yeah.
Good. That's all.
Thank you. David?
Through you, Madam Chair, just to add to what Marianne just said, she's pretty well covered it. But it's a tricky balance to strike. You know, if you take away people's names, you start to depersonalise the council, and we want to be friendly to our community and customers. So it's a bit of a balance to strike. But yeah, we do have processes and procedures in place to protect staff. It's part of the reason why we're putting this in place as another step in shoring up those protections. And you'll see in a report or two's time on the agenda, when we look at the health and safety dashboard, of all of our critical risks that we've identified, abuse and physical threatening behaviour towards staff is the one reoccurring trend in of all of those risks. To your point, though, if we do see comments being made that are personal against individual staff members that are outside of the council's direct control on other people's Facebook pages, we do step in to support the staff member. We have in the past considered supporting legal action for defamation against people. So we do those things, but very much it's a judgment call on a case-by-case basis. And obviously we need to see it to know it's going on as well, which sometimes these things are well hidden from us.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny?
Thank you. With regards to just harping on about this Facebook thing in particular pages as opposed to individuals' pages, has any consideration been given to making contact or trying to make contact with the admins of some of these bigger pages and to try and get some kind of an agreement between, you know, what they'll try and shut down? Because I've seen some pretty ugly stuff, and I've seen the impact on the faces of some of our people, and it's not okay.
Short answer, Jenny, is yes. That is something we've done in the past and can do more of. And some pages are better. I have noticed some admin will remove comments that are inappropriate from their pages, and it's something I've noticed that the Chronicle has started to do in recent times as well, is moderate some of the less appropriate comments.
Thank you. I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report, the Unreasonable Complainant Conduct Policy. A mover and a seconder, please. Yeah, Andrew and Josh. Any comments? Any further comments? Councillor Michael?
Just a small one. When I read through this, I honestly thought, why do we need this? And then I realised why we needed this. And it's very well written. I think it's very fair. It steps out in a nice, logical fashion, and to protect people from making, say, more irrational calls by blocking people, whereas a step-by-step. I'm just very sad that we need this. And that's the problem we're in right now. And I think we all need to be aware of everyone's raising emotions, and hopefully this allows them to refrain themselves as well. So thank you for writing. Yep.
Yes, I thought it was a very good policy. I was looking for the sort of escalation type process and who then becomes the delegated decision maker if you do need to, you know, trespass somebody or so that was in here. I also just want to acknowledge that I go into council facilities in and out of here, eyesight in the last couple of weeks for some bookings and things, and the library, and I'd have to say the staff are absolutely fabulous, and so, you know, you do a really great job. They're always very friendly, I find, and very, very efficient. So, yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that. Yeah, so thank you very much for the policy. I think it's great to have it in place to protect and to support people to feel safe about doing their jobs, and that's important. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, look, I do want to add to your point. I just hear from time and time again the great feedback about our customer service team, Rowan. So I know I've kind of passed that on every now and then, but I want to say that publicly. So please pass that on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All, so if there's no other comments, all those in favour, recommendation? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks. Okay. All right, we're up to the Chief Executive's Health and Safety Due Diligence Activity Report. Thank you for this, David. I know you've been very busy and it's always great to get this report, so thank you. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. This report just outlines some of the key activity that I've been undertaking as the officer of the organisation under the Health and Safety at Work Act. As you all know, I have personal responsibilities and personal liabilities to ensure that what the organisation says we're doing from a health and safety point of view is actually happening on the ground, and I can't just sit in my office and assume that what people are telling me is correct and accurate. And there's a requirement for me to get out there and see it with my own eyes, understand how the organisation is working, and verify that we are doing what we say we're doing. Some of the key activity this quarter, as summarised in the report, we have our organisational health and safety culture survey underway at the moment. It closes this Friday, and that will no doubt provide some insights on where the organisation thinks we need to focus our leadership and our improvement efforts going forward. We've also been monitoring the partnership that the council has with Mates in Construction. Mates is a program that was introduced from Australia a couple of years ago to New Zealand. Its focus is on the construction sector and the high rate of suicides amongst the workforce. You may ask what the relevance of that is to council, but as we spend probably 80% of our money on construction activities, whether it's in our parks or property team or our three warders and roading teams, we are probably one of the largest, if not the largest, construction client in the district. We also have our building inspectors going on to pretty much every construction job site in the district to monitor the work that's been done there. So we have a presence in construction, even though we may not recognise it. In the past, we've trained a lot of our project managers and our building inspectors to be what's called connectors. Effectively, they're trained in mental health first aid, and they can support people that may be struggling to get connected to professional clinical help if that's appropriate. As you can see from the report, we've been rolling out the Mates program on the Port project, and we've also had some of the contractor staff from the Sargent Gallery project attend some of the training, and some of them are going on to the higher level of training so that they actually have the skill to actively intervene with people that may be experiencing distress and feeling suicidal. I have meetings in my diary with the Mates team to see how we can continue to progress this partnership and get maximum value from it. But one of the intention is that as council, we're the anchor partner in the district, and we can make this available to as many of our community that work in construction as possible. I am also, I suppose, both pleased and disappointed at the same time to report that Whanganui District Council was the first local authority to sign up to the Mates program as a partner. The disappointment is that after 2 years, we are still the only local authority to sign up to the program. I've also been proactively monitoring the Chasnz improvement actions, and you've got a report on the agenda that outlines the progress that's been made there. And then finally, the LTP consultation process. I think we've already talked around the social media implications for staff in the previous report item. And then finally, pulling together a review of our strategic risk register. It's pleasing to see that there's quite a bit of movement in the risk register, particularly in the top 10 space, because some of the big effort that has gone into implementing the Chasnz recommendations, implementing the business case processes, and increasing funding for our infrastructure maintenance and renewals, all of those things in combination are starting to have an impact on those related risks, and we're seeing the residual risk level drop on those. Further work is to be done, but as you'll appreciate, maintaining a risk register is a never-ending job. Happy to take questions from that.
Thank you, David. Any questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you for your report. I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report. Chief Executive's Health and Safety Due Diligence Activity Report. I'm happy to move. Anyone to second? Thank you, Jenny. Any comments? I'd just like to thank you, David, for your continued work in this area and you know, taking that personal responsibility. I think you demonstrate that at each of our meetings, and so we really do appreciate that. I'm also delighted to see the strategic risk register review and how that will sort of come back to us because, yeah, things have moved pretty quickly in the last few months, so thank you. Councillor Jenny.
Thank you. Yeah, same from me. A big thank you for all the work that goes on into this area. Earlier comment of mine about terminology, you know, Chasnz is what? I mean, I know, but I just think it just helps to give some colour to those few people who actually do read these outside of here. But hey, really disappointing that we are still the only one. It's great to be first, but 2 years down the track, I can't understand it. It seems strange. So hopefully that will change in the next wee while. So well done for being a leader. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then we'll put the recommendation as it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. All right. Welcome Catherine and Olivia to the table with the the Chasnz report. I should spread that. I should say the whole thing, shouldn't I? Anyway, the update for April. So I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm happy to take this report as read and answer any questions, as it is fairly lengthy.
Cool. Again, any questions on the report? Is there something you'd like to say, David?
I suppose two things. First of all, Chasnz is Construction Health and Safety New Zealand, for anybody who's listening in, as soon as that keeps getting asked. We have too many TLAs, that's 3-letter acronyms. And then the second point, I think I said it previously, really good progress. A lot of the necessary recommendations have now been completed or are substantially complete, which is really good progress. And I thank Olivia for the drive that she's put behind this and the rest of the organisation that's contributed to the progress that we've made so far. I think Kate.
Councillor Kate.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Just to context my question, at the start of the report, we talk about that the work continues at a pace appropriate for the resource available, the staff, and organisational uptake. At the same time, I'm seeing that there's lots of progress getting made. I'm just a little bit anxious, well, not anxious, maybe, and David, maybe you're the one to speak to this, just in terms of we've got a few 8 recommendations that have not yet commenced, and I don't necessarily have a feel for how urgent they might be, other than knowing that the team, if the team thought they were urgent, they would be getting addressed.
through you, Madam Chair, I think I go back to my earlier comment. The higher priority actions are the ones that have been progressed to completion, and effectively we're working through them more or less in priority order. Those that are yet to start are the discretionary recommendations. Myself and the executive team did meet with Olivia earlier this week to discuss some of those, and one of the considerations for those optional recommendations is to review and see whether they're actually still required, and we may in the future park one or two of them if we think the effort to implement them outweighs the benefit that we'll realise. I think the only one that really stands out for me, and it was one we discussed earlier this week in the same meeting, is the continuing to improve our maturity when it comes to the critical risks. Whilst we've made good inroads in identifying what the most critical risks are, those that are most likely to result in serious harm or fatality to our people or the community, we've still got quite a lot of work to do to complete the full risk assessment on them, make sure we've got both the preventative and the recovery controls identified. They're actually in place on the ground, and then figure out how we're going to maintain a robust monitoring and assurance program over those critical controls. It is probably one area we're going to have a discussion around how do we accelerate that work, which may be a bit more resource, or it may be reprioritising some of the actions. But on the whole, I'm feeling significantly more comfortable today than I was when I commissioned this report. And again, pleased with the progress that the team have made.
Fantastic, thank you. So what's next in terms of this report? You've already touched on what kind of this follow-up question was, and I'm hearing that from an operational perspective, you're, in my words, continuing to embed this work in the organisation. So from the committee's perspective, what are we thinking will be our next steps? Like, this will remain in, I'm sure Debbie will tell me it's on the work program somewhere. This will stay in front of us in this form, and then it will morph into some other form of reporting.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the Chasnz report is for a finite horizon. It was about identifying the issues of the day, and obviously now it's aged and will be over a year old. Once we've worked through the recommendations and they're implemented, I think we'll be entering into more of a cyclical phase, the plan, do, check, adjust approach, where we'll do further reviews. They may well be on the internal audit program, but we need to keep checking our performance and looking for that next wave of improvements that we need to make as we drive up the maturity and the capability of the organisation. So this report will serve its purpose. It will come to an end. There'll be a new review that'll identify the new areas for improvement, and we'll continue to chase that continuous improvement curve.
Sure, nice answer, thank you.
And Kate, we do have it on our work program for the next 3 meetings, and I think we'll sort of get to a point where we'll say, we've now got this to a point where if there are a few still outstanding, or we decide whether they went into the corrective actions or the organisational improvement, or as David said, it sort of winds the whole big report, reporting around that up. Yeah. Okay. Do we have anybody else? Any other questions? No? Then I'll put that we received the report. I'm happy to move. Anyone to second? Thank you, Josh. All those in favour? Oh, any comments? Sorry. Yeah. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. And now the quarterly health... Oh, Kate, sorry. Did she vote?
No, she just had her hand up.
Oh, you're right. Okay, you're all in favour? Thank you. Thanks. Olivia, thank you for the quarterly dashboard on the Health and Safety Wellbeing Update report. Anybody, is there anything you'd like to highlight on there? It's usually pretty, you highlight well on here.
Thank you. If you've read the key information, then I'm happy to take it as read with any questions.
Cool. Any questions on the dashboard for February and March? No, that's good. Sorry. That's cool. No questions. Then the recommendation, I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report, the Quality Health and Safety Update report. A move and a seconder, please. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Any comments? All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you. Thank you very much.
I must say that's probably the least I've ever said in any meeting ever. Thank you very much. Appreciated.
Quality, not quantity.
Yeah. No, we didn't. Mayor, did you want to say something?
Oh, just a comment. But both of these, we're going back to the risk work that Debbie did before into health and safety as well. I just see a different energy in this space from a governance level. So well done to both the risk function and health and safety function, Olivia. And I guess, Catherine, you're part of that as well. So thank you very much. Nice work.
Okay. We've got 3 items left on our agenda. Yeah. I'm going to hand over to Debbie for the international transaction update. They're all your items, actually.
This is the first of 3 items for me. I'm going to take the International Transaction Update report as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions on the report? Okay, that's good. Kate, sorry, yes?
I have a question.
Good.
Thank you. Like it says in the report that council completed an immediate process.
Yep.
And with the benefit of hindsight, do you think we could have done any better in terms of our immediate process and identifying the issues and stopping any subsequent attempts at fraud?
David?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it'd be a bit of hubris for me to say, no, we couldn't have done any better. I'm sure there's always things that could be done better. But what I would say is that there was a subsequent attempt to defraud the council, and as a result of the additional controls that were put in place after the first one, that was successfully defended. So I think that is probably an indicator that what we did in response to this was effective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report, the International Transaction Update. I'm happy to move. Anyone to second? Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Any comments? Jenny?
Thank you. I think this is a really great outcome, and I think where it's landed, it's actually a very cheap lesson that set us up really well to ensure that something bigger doesn't happen. So sometimes when these things do happen and they're contained in a way that this is and minimised down to the level that this was, you know, we get a huge benefit out of it in a way that we wouldn't if we had just done it as an intellectual exercise. So although I'm not pleased it happened, I'm pleased with the learnings that the organisation's been able to achieve from this and that it was minimised to this level. So it's a good outcome. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, I'll put the recommendation as it is on the screen and that we've moved. Anyone in favour? Is everyone in favour? Anyone against? That's great. It's carried. Thank you. Debbie, your assurance activity summary. Thank you for that report. And I'll pass it to you.
Thank you through the chair. I'm going to take the report as read, but I just want to highlight the fact there has been significant progress made with getting policies updated. So that is, again, is a very positive pathway with that. You'll see a summary of the most recent ones there. And again, sorry, just an update of the activities that have been happening across the wider risk management space. So take the report as read and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions on the report? Oh, that's very good. It's a very useful report and it gives us an update in progress. So thank you for your work, Debbie. No questions, then I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report. A mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Josh and the Mayor. Any comments? Great risk assurance, Debbie. Good report. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried, thanks. And back to you, Debbie. Just our work program, is that?
I'd like to present to the committee through the chair the most recent work program update. This is a dynamic document, so any new items or any movements that have come from this meeting will be reflected in the next iteration of it. It's also available on the Teams site, and we'll keep the updates going on there. So again, take the report as read and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? When are we having that workshop? Is that on our work program, or are we putting that on the risk appetite around October? Right. Okay. All right. And we've got Mike. We've got Mark Fermor. We've got insurance update. Every meeting and insurance renewal. So you'll keep coming forward with the progress of the insurance journey at each of our upcoming meetings.
It's anticipated we'll have something to present, but we'll face at each committee meeting.
Okay, that's cool. All right. So if there is, as Debbie said, it's dynamic. She and I talk between meetings as well, and if there are, items that come up, we add them. So if anybody has any feedback or something they'd like us to be bringing to the committee, I think that's important that you let us know. And we do a review against our terms of reference to just say, are we covering all the bases? And I guess I go back to my point earlier just about the changes with the CCOs and project management implementation. There's a few things that we'll keep under review. All right, so I'll put the recommendation that we receive the work program update. I'm happy to move. Somebody to second. Thank you, Mike Timmer. And I did notice Kate had her hand up that time too. So I think we've got a mover and a seconder. Thank you. Any comment? All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Yeah? Thank you. All right. I'll call the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions today and all the work that goes into bringing the papers forward for us from the team. So to David, Mike and Debbie and others who've contributed, thank you very much. Okay.
Closing Karakia.
I haven't. Have you got it? Oh,
yeah.
Over to you, Jenny. Thank you very much for the closing Karakia.
Unless you'd like to do it.
No, thank you. You've got it.
E oha ki runga ki a Whanganui, e oha ki raro ki a Papatuanuku, o ka tairanga, te kupu, te kōrero, te mahi, ki te pō o te ware, hei tonga, hei mahi a muri, ka puta ki te wai ao, ki te ao marama, humie, huie, tai kie.
Kia ora. Thank you very much.